And for more detail on his crucial first budget, I spoke to the Treasurer Kim Wells at Parliament House late this afternoon. Well, Kim Wells, thanks for joining 7:30.
Pleasure.
In opposition, you are highly critical of Labor's debt, and yet in your first budget, debt is set to more than double, and you failed to deliver a promised debt reduction plan. Are you just procrastinating?
No, let me explain the issue of debt. We've had $4.1 billion of shortfalls in GST from the Gillard-Swan government. We've had $2 billion of cost overruns, plus $550 million of Commonwealth deferred payments. So $6.5 billion that has hit this budget. So that's a significant amount. So we had a choice to make. Do we deal with debt in year one, or do we deliver our election commitments? We decided that we had to deliver on our election commitments, and we have. If we had have dealt with the debt in year one, there would have been significant job losses, increase in taxes, and we were not prepared to do it. Delivering our election commitments was our priority.
When you say dealing with debt, you commissioned a report from 3 highly respected economists who've said that you should actually eradicate state debt in the next 10 years. Will you do that?
Look, as I said today, what we'll be doing is making sure we have a debt management plan and putting that in place. I would have loved to have had it done by now.
When do you think you will do it by?
Well, I would have loved to have had it done by now. But the problem is that when we were hit with the GST, the cost overruns, we're getting flooded with financial problems. So over the next few months, once this budget has been bedded in, we will then work very hard on a debt management plan, and I think that's fair, because you cannot continually rely on debt to fund projects. It is unrealistic.
You've cut more than $600 million in what you call the back room of government departments, but they include departments such as health and education. Can you guarantee that not one job will be lost as a result?
What happened in the run-up to the election, we promised, or we made it clear that there will be $1.6 billion worth of savings. When we started the budget process, we had to dig deeper into those savings. So there's another $600 million. So yes, you're right, it's $2.2 billion of savings over the forward estimates period. But the result of jobs is actually there will be an actual increase of 4,000 jobs across the public sector over the 11-12 year.
But as a result of those backroom cuts, will anyone lose their jobs?
Well, we're actually adding to the public sector,
but not as a result of those $600 million cuts to department programs and grants and that sort of thing. Will anyone out of that specific set of savings lose a job?
Well, the reality is that there will be some programs that will be lapsing, and people will move from that program to a program that we are commencing. So there will be transfers within the public service, but that goes on all the time. But the bottom line is that there will be 4,000 more jobs in the public sector over the 11-12 year. Your
unallocated money goes from about $300 million this year to nearly $2 billion just before the next election. Is that a substantial war chest you're building?
No, what's happening is that we needed to make sure that we have about 1% of gross state product allocated to infrastructure. So we had to make sure that we had that unallocated amount to make sure that we are building infrastructure to keep pace with population.
Well, on population growth, clearly that's one of your biggest challenges, and yet one of the biggest infrastructure projects for the state, the regional rail link, hasn't got any specific funding in this year's budget. Why not?
We've actually put about $1 billion into the regional rail in the 11-12 year. That was put in there previously. But, I mean, once again, the regional rail is a very important project. The problem is that there is a significant cost overrun even before it went out to tender.
But when will people know the money that you plan to put into that project to kickstart it?
Yeah, no, there's an allocation of infrastructure spend of about $6 billion, and part of the regional rail is in that $6 billion for the 11-12 year.
On another big project, Mikey, did you intend to drop a bombshell today when you said, when we take ownership of Mikey, we want to make sure it works?
The situation is that we're in negotiations, and it's a difficult situation, Mikey.
But that seemed to indicate that you actually will keep it on.
Well, there's a significant amount of negotiations that are taking place, and this is a difficult mess that we've inherited. And when you look at it, you think, okay, we should be able to fix this. And as you dig deeper and deeper into Mikey, it becomes more of a financial mess, and that's why we're taking the time to try and make sure that we are able to sort it out one way or the other.
Treasurer, this is the first interview you've done in quite some time. Interest groups also said they couldn't meet with you prior to the budget, and Labor described you as missing in action. Do you think you mishandled the pre-budget publicity by becoming part of the story yourself?
A couple of things. I think I've met with most of the groups. I mean, there were some reports in the paper over the weekend which are just blatantly wrong. In fact, in one case, one of the organisations actually cancelled the meeting themselves. So, I mean, there was a bit of misreporting, which is very disappointing. But look, I'm the Treasurer. I'm the Treasurer of this great state. And we have to make sure that this budget is right.
Finally, does the government have faith in Chief Commissioner Simon Overland, given Victoria Police appears to have capitulated to the Labor government's pressure last year to release misleading crime statistics?
That's a question for the Police Minister.
But as Treasurer, you've just poured a lot of money into the police budget. Do you have faith in Simon Overland?
Well, we are looking at 1,600 new police plus 100 transit police, plus we have the 940 PSOs. So law and order and community safety was one of the big ticket items, and we expect the police force to be able to deliver on our election commitments.
Do you have faith in Simon Overland?
Well, the government has the respect and has faith in the Chief Commissioner.
Kim Wells, thanks for your time.
Pleasure.
And I'm joined now in the studio by Shadow Treasurer Tim Holding. Tim Holding, thanks very much for coming in tonight.
It's great to be on the program, Chasey.
Firstly, the budget. The job and service cuts that you were anticipating didn't seem to materialise. Did you misread the government's signals?
Well, the government said it would be a budget devoid of spin, and in fact, if we listen to the Treasurer just then and if we read the budget documents today, we see that it's a budget that's built around spin. They've spent a lot of time trying to trash the record of the previous government, but the budget that they've delivered today really accepts many of the economic settings that the previous government put in place. So I think really it was a disappointing budget in many respects.
In what way though? Because welfare groups, for example, have welcomed the spending that they weren't particularly anticipating. I mean, has the coalition outmanoeuvred sort of Labor's home ground on that issue?
Well, not at all. I mean, the Treasurer spoke for 35 minutes today, and not once in his budget speech did he mention the words jobs or employment. Now, for the last 5 years, the Victorian economy has outperformed the rest of Australia in terms of jobs creation. One of the best things you can do to help Victorian families, to help ease the pressure on Victorian families, is to create jobs. And we saw a budget today that doesn't have a vision, it doesn't have a plan for how you create the jobs, how you continue to create the jobs that underscore the living standards and take the pressure off Victorian families. And I think on that fundamental test, the vision and the plan for our state, this budget receives a big F.
What particularly do you take issue with, though? Because they didn't do what you expected and try and reduce debt by cutting jobs and services. They've actually increased funding for areas for some vulnerable Victorians. What particularly do you dislike about the budget?
Well, we asked the government to outline a vision for Victoria. Now, after 11 years in opposition, you would have imagined that Ted Baillieu would have been champing at the bit to outline his plan to take Victorians forward. No vision for Victoria. We also asked...
But what do you mean by no vision for Victoria? This is their vision. It's just not yours.
Well, no plan to create jobs. Now, they acknowledge...
Just that, though. What else apart from
we asked them to keep their promises. We asked them to keep the solemn undertakings.
And haven't they largely kept their promises? $5.1 billion?
They said that Victorian teachers would be the highest paid in the nation. This budget now makes it absolutely clear that they have no intention of keeping that promise whatsoever. So Victorian teachers who voted for the coalition at the last election, believing that they would become the best paid teachers in Australia, have been fundamentally let down. Now, what Victorian family was promised at the last election that they would not be able to access the school start bonus, yet we learn from today's budget that 100,000 families will now be denied access, 100,000 Victorian families will now be denied access to the school start bonus. When was that promised by the coalition at the last election? They've phased out. They're now phasing out the apprentice...
We'll have to just leave the budget there for a second. I think you've made your point on that slashing there. Let's leave the budget and go to the serious claims emanating from Victoria Police. 7:30 Victoria has confirmed senior police believe the Brumby government pressured them to release favourable crime statistics before last year's state election. Here's what was said last year.
We might have won the first battle, but I think there's some more battles to go before we're going to get there.
There's been a 27.5% reduction in street violence in Melbourne CBD and a 12.4% reduction across the state.
All of the ABS statistics continue to confirm that our state of Victoria is the safest state in Australia.
So, Tim Holding, did Labor pressure senior Victoria Police to release favourable crime statistics?
Well, Josie, as you know, this claim is being investigated by the Ombudsman at the moment. Now, the Police Minister was asked, the Coalition Government's Police Minister was asked today to comment on these matters, and he quite responsibly said that the Ombudsman is conducting an investigation and it would be inappropriate to provide a running commentary on those matters. Now, I wasn't the Police Minister last year. I'm not the Police Minister at the moment, so I'm not in a position to make a finding for the Ombudsman. He's conducting the investigation, and the appropriate thing to do, as Police Minister Peter Ryan said today, is to let the Ombudsman complete his investigation. And
the Ombudsman will and draw his own conclusions. What do you believe, or what do you understand? Was there any pressure on police to release misleading or favourable statistics?
Well, I've obviously seen these claims made in this morning's newspaper. The Ombudsman's conducting an investigation. He's in the best position to get to the bottom of these things. I do know that over the period that Labor was in office, crimes against the person, crimes against property diminished substantially, and they're independently audited figures that are collated nationally so that different states can be compared against other states.
So you deny categorically that there was any political pressure put on senior police?
The point I'm making, Josie, is that over the period that we were in office, unambiguously on nationally collated data, crime in Victoria dropped, and they dropped because of the substantial investments that our government made in recruiting additional police and providing the resources that those police need to be able to provide the safest possible community for Victorians.
Do you deny that there was any political pressure placed on police?
Well, I make it clear, I'm not in a position to provide a running commentary on the compilation of crime statistics immediately prior to the election. I wasn't the Police Minister at the time, and I'm not the Police Minister at the moment. But I do make it clear that if these claims have been made, they're being investigated by the Ombudsman, and he's in the best position now to be able to provide a report to Victorians.
We'll see where that goes. Thanks, Tim Holding, very much for coming in tonight.
Thanks, Josie.